Hey guys, we're back in the garage today to do another video, and I think today's gonna be a little bit different. I wanted to do a video on tires and wheels and kind of my philosophy on tires, specifically tires for dirt bikes or enduro motocross bikes. Yeah, I feel like I have a lot to say. Clearly from looking around, I like tires and I like wheels, and yeah, I feel like I have something to share with kind of the average guy about tires and how to get the most out of your tires and motorcycle combination, right? So a little bit about me. I'm a mechanical engineer by profession. I design things for a living. I also like to think of things as trade-offs. I don't like to think of things as being the best or, you know, the ultimate. I don't see things that way. I think everything has a collection of pros and cons. And that's really my philosophy behind tires and tire selection, right, for what I do. And yeah, that's a little bit about what I want to share today, right? I want to share a little bit about how I go about, how I've gone about picking the tires that I use on a daily basis, and maybe a little bit of comments about the tires. This is not a tire review. I think I'm going to do kind of add-on videos or follow-on videos to this, you know, specifically looking at tires, specifically looking at specific tires and doing kind of little mini tire reviews, right? I also want to do maybe a review on using different types of tubes and mousses and tubeless systems. I think there's a lot to say there, right? But specifically today, I just want to talk about kind of the philosophy of tires, or maybe some things you can walk away with to make you maybe appreciate tires or put in more work into picking your tires and getting the most out of your tires, right? So yeah, so around me I have, you know, my two off-road motorcycles, right? I have a KTM 250XC, a 2018, and then I have a 2019 450 SX that has been converted to an enduro bike. And I have a bunch of wheel assemblies, right? So clearly I like tires and I like wheels, right? So I enjoy building wheels. I have six different rear wheel assemblies here and 4 different front wheel assemblies. And well, one, I like to build wheels, and two, for me, it's important to have multiple wheels ready to go at any time. I like to test tires. I like to kind of explore what a tire can give me. I like to explore tire combinations. And so for me, it's worthwhile investing into having multiple wheel sets, right? I can go back and forth between tires. I have different types of wheels here. None of the wheels here are OEM, right? I reuse all the OEM hubs with the exception of one wheel set. And then I go ahead and I build wheels with stainless steel spokes and either Excel A60 wheels or rims, which I can talk about in depth later, or Takasago wheels, which are super good, right? They come in a lot of different bikes. I also have a combination of 19 and 18-inch rear wheels, and they each have their purpose. So kind of to get into the discussion, really I have my notes here, but I want to just talk, I want to share kind of 4 ideas that I've kind of developed over the years of testing tires for myself. So, and I have them written down here, and I just want to work through them and just share my thoughts. So I think the number one thing is tires really are number one. And what I mean by that is if you have a functional motorcycle, right, a motorcycle that works and works in a basic way, the most important thing, right, that will affect the performance of your motorcycle is tires. And I know that's probably been said before, and it's maybe very obvious to a lot of you, but I think for the novice and intermediate riders, I don't know if they realize that. I don't know if they realize to what extent that is. So a bad set of tires will negatively affect your motorcycle in every way. It'll affect every measurable performance area of your dirt bike, right? You know, in the contrast, a good set of tires or a fresh set of tires will elevate your motorcycle, right? So I think someone else said this, and they said something like, you know, you can take Ken Roxon's Supercross motorcycle and you can have it right here in front of us. And if it has worn out tires, you know, it's no better than a stock motorcycle, right? But if it has brand new tires, it is absolutely awesome, right? So I just think that tires are number one, and what I mean by that is I think we underplay the value of tires and the importance of tires, especially for guys starting out. And I think it has to do with kind of the perception that tires are, one, expensive, and two, they're difficult to change. I will say dirt bikes aren't cheap. Like I don't want to say that they are, but for a lot of guys that ride these very expensive motorcycles, you know, these dirt bikes are anywhere between $7,000 and $12,000, right? You know, a set of tires really is pretty minuscule compared to like the entire experience. And so kind of get away from the idea that dirt bike tires are expensive, because I think in the grand scheme of things, they're really not. And if you look at it for what they can give you for versus what they cost, there's no better value equation than a fresh set of tires. So I would say rethink about how expensive tires are. And then the other thing too is, you know, I think tires, they're perceived as difficult to change. And I think they can be difficult to change if you haven't done it, right? But if you get good at it, it's really not hard. And, you know, it'll prevent you from having that barrier of keeping fresh tires and good tires and appropriate tires and tires that you like on your dirt bike. So I will say, you know, tires are number one. You know, I would say get over changing tires. Like, learn how to change a tire. It's on dirt bikes, it's really not hard. You don't have to balance them. You just have to get them on there right. You need the right tools. You need the right time. You know, you need the time doing it. I think after you probably have done your third tire, it's really pretty straightforward. And I mean, I can swap out a 2 base tire in 25 minutes, right? So I think once you get past those hurdles, the psychological hurdle of, man, tires are expensive, and then, man, tires are hard to change, then kind of your world opens up for trying different tires, not running tires past a certain point, and just really getting the most out of tires. I just think that's super important to remember, you know, that the set of tires that you have on your dirt bike will affect the entire experience you have on your dirt bike. So not only should you kind of keep up with that, right, but you should also put the effort into finding what tire works for you, right? And that's kind of what this video is about, right? So on to the second point. The second point really is important to me because I like to think in terms of trade-offs, right? And the second point is that there is no best tire. And I really want to spend time on this because the internet will convince you there is a best tire, and your friends might convince you they have a best tire. I can absolutely guarantee you there is no best tire, okay? There are tires that are better than other tires, right? There are tires that are higher quality than other tires. But what I mean by no best tire is that the best tire depends on the skill level that you have, the terrain you are riding, the speed that you're riding at, and a lot of it has to do with the style of how you ride, right? You know, we each have our own different riding style, and it really will determine like what tire works well for you, right? So there's no best tire, and I would encourage you to think in that way, because when you realize, you know, there is no best tire, there's probably a collection of tires that work for individuals, right? Given terrain, given speed, given ability, but there's still going to be kind of a collection of tires that will work really well for you. So I would encourage you to go find what works well for you and get away from this mentality of like, tell me what the best tire is so I can go buy it. There is no best tire. And the sooner you kind of depart with that thought, I think the sooner you will kind of progress in becoming better, but also finding what works best for you, which will let you become better, right? So that's my second point. The third point is that traction is not everything. So I think there's a couple of, I would say there's probably two avenues that lead to people believing that traction of a tire is everything. I think the first avenue is a lot of novice guys and guys that are inexperienced. You know, they struggle with getting up hills. They struggle with just the basics of a motorcycle and controlling the motorcycle, you know, up and forward progression, right? So for them, traction, like just vertical traction, like upright, is really important. And so they believe that any tire that gives them the most amount of traction forward is the best tire. And that's just not true. Vertical traction or upright traction is just a component of what makes the tire suitable or not suitable for a given application, okay? the other thing I will say is there's currently in 2021 there's a big kind of push and fad towards hard enduro riding where vertical traction is really important, and getting that drive from a standstill is very important. And I definitely think there's been massive leaps in hybrid tires to let you kind of get that traction. But I just think it can be overplayed. I don't think it's an end-all be-all to have a tire that gives you, massive upright traction. So traction is not everything. I mean, I think, I think a tire, I think you have to think of, when evaluating a tire and if it's useful or applicable to you, I think you have to take traction in consideration, but there's a lot of other variables, especially as you get better and more advanced, right? So as an example, like, there's vertical traction, right, which I've been talking about, and then there's traction in the turns, right? And that's a whole different type of traction. It's a whole different type of kind of ability for a tire to perform, right? Typically, tires that are soft, they do really well in vertical traction. They don't do so well in, turning traction, and that's because they tend to roll and deform a lot. So just keep that in mind, that traction is not everything. A couple of the things that I like to think about for evaluating a tire are, yes, traction, but also I like to think of tires, how do they roll, right? How much momentum do they maintain? How much do they flex, right? When you're either going over an obstacle or into a turn. How predictable are they? I think for me personally, predictability of a tire is just as important as just straight up traction, right? So as you get better, you will get to the point where you will learn how to slide around and play around with traction, and your tires will actually begin to slide. Not only your rear, but your front, right? And so a good tire, in my opinion, is a tire that lets you know when that slide is going to start, and then when the slide begins, it will be very predictable and you can bring it back, right? So I know I've played with and tested tires that are like super popular, and they're big and fat, and they're very comfortable over a lot of terrain. But when they go into those conditions where they start to let go, and you need predictability and precision into a turn, they really don't succeed. So I think there's a lot more to tires than just straight up traction. So keep that in mind, okay? And so yeah, traction is definitely not everything. And when I mean by traction, I mean upright traction, right? And then the last point that I'll kind of leave you with is that, and this is more for kind of novice guys, is the front and the rear, they're different, right? They're not meant to do the same thing. They don't have similar functions on a motorcycle. They do totally different things on a dirt bike, right? I like to think about it in a simplistic way. Your front tire is kind of your control and your precision, right? It's kind of where you want the motorcycle to go, right? And then your rear tire is for propulsion, right? It's for pushing you or driving you forward. And so those are two very different requirements out of a tire. And when you think of the front and the rear being extremely different, right? You can think of the different properties you want given a condition and terrain, and you can begin to evaluate the front and rear tire independently, right? I most often run a different brand of front tire than a different brand of rear tire. And generally speaking, I have a couple of front tires that are my just hands down favorite, because what I'm looking for out of a front is predictability more than anything else, right? More than traction or comfort or anything like that. I'm looking for predictability, because predictability in the front tire is super important, especially as you start getting into the higher speeds and the more aggressive riding. I mean, you need to be able to have faith in that front tire. So I have a couple of favorite front tires that I use, and then I have a whole host of rear tires that I use, because the rear tire really is kind of condition dependent and speed dependent, much more so than the front. So think of the tires, the front and the rear tires as completely independent from each other, right? Their functions being independent to a certain extent. And then also the combinations of those front and the rear will have a certain effect on your motorcycle, and it's worthwhile to spend time playing with that, right? And I think the last point I'll make, which isn't even written here, is, if there is any takeaway from this little mini video, is, don't be afraid to experiment. Like, learn how to change a tire, get good at it, maybe buy an extra rear tire, right? Maybe an extra front. I would say certainly a rear, and be able to test tires back to back. I mean, most guys have one set of wheels, right? They have one dirt bike with a front and a rear, and they changed their tires, not often enough. And so when they go from one tire to the next, well, their rear tire, let's say, is so absolutely shot that by the time they put on a new rear tire, that they automatically love the next tire they put on. And they can't properly evaluate the new rear tire in an apples to apples comparison, right? Because they just got rid of a tire that was worn out. When you have, you know, at least 2 rear wheels or more than 1 rear wheel, you can go back and forth and really see the subtleties and the differences between tires. And you can really start to kind of, you know, eliminate what doesn't work for you, and then continue to improve on what does work for you. So I would just encourage you guys to get better at changing tires, maybe get an extra set of wheels, and really put the time into figuring out what works for you. And again, I am certainly not going to say what is the best tire, because that answer doesn't exist. But I will say that if you have the option of multiple wheel sets, you can in a much faster manner iterate on what works for you and the type of terrain, right? So yeah, hopefully that helps. And again, so just to review, tires are number 1. They're super important, like cannot be underplayed how important they are. Number 2, there's absolutely no best tire out there. There's better tires for a certain application, terrain, speed, and style of rider. Number 3, traction is not everything. It might seem like it is, especially if you're kind of new to dirt bikes, but it is not. I promise you it's not. There's a lot of qualities to a tire that make it good, and those qualities are much broader than just traction. And number 4, the front and the rear are very different. So keep those in mind, and I will see you guys next time with maybe some tire reviews. And yeah, talk next time. Thanks.